Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all those present and to those listening online. Today at AL-BURHAAN we are doing the introduction to Islamic business economics, and this course is meant or targeted towards young businessmen or women who are entering into the business field and wish to know about Islamic business concepts and various different business models that Islam permits and those that Islam doesn't permit. So fundamentally, going straight into the course material, we have our content, which is the code of Islamic law. Thereafter we will do transactions and partnerships, profit share ratios. Then we will go into in future lessons, we will do financing models, we'll do leasing, we'll have a point about riba and a lesson on riba, that is interest transactions, and common mistakes found in businesses, and the solution, Islamic solution that is found for us to conduct business. So fundamentally, the course material, or the source material rather, for which we derive our Islamic laws are firstly the Quran Sharif, that is a book that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to us by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is a complete book of guidance for us for our entire life. In this book we find various verses that are specifically showing us and telling us how to lead our lives and how to conduct our affairs with our fellow brethren, how to conduct our family life, how to make salah, or rather how to make ibadat, and the various injunctions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed on us, and also some verses specifically on how to conduct business. One of the biggest verse in Quran Sharif, the biggest verse, the longest verse in the entire Quran, is a verse specifically about business and giving advice to businessmen as to how they should be conducting business and what they should avoid doing and what they should be doing. One of the injunctions in Quran, in the verses, is that we write our transactions down. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is encouraging us that whenever we do any business, we should write the transaction, write the agreement down, so that later on, if there is any dispute, we can always refer to what we have written down. Obviously, this is not an injunction that makes it necessary to do, but it is encouraged that we do it, and if we don't do it, then there's no sin. Again, later in the verse it also says that there is no sin if we don't do it, but as an encouragement, it is better that we do write our transactions down. Thereafter, if we don't find anything in Quran, then we go to the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he came and he explained. Like example, in Quran it tells us to read salah, to give zakat, but we don't know how much to give, we don't know how to read salah. So in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we find there are explanations further on Quran Sharif and various injunctions that we have to do. Many of them are relating to our family life, our social dealings, many of them with regards to our ibadat, and many of them with regards to specifically our business transactions. So that's what we are going to consider and work with in this course. Thereafter, after Quran and Hadith, if we don't find anything, then there is consensus of the ulama. This is called ijma', where everybody, even though it's not found in Quran and Hadith, the specific point, but everybody is in agreement on this point. We'll discuss one of these points will be coming in the slides as we move on. But it's not a big section, but it's also a very important section that is after Quran and Hadith. Then is qiyas, ijma', that everybody agrees upon, and if anybody comes with something contrary to this, it will be immediately rejected because it's against the consensus of the ulama of a specific period. Thereafter we have qiyas, and that is the mazahib that we follow, that is the Hanafi mazhab, the Shafi mazhab, the Maliki, and the Hanbali mazhab. The four mazahib are formed. That is specifically first Quran, then Hadith, then ijma', and then after this we follow the mazhab, the qiyas. So the ulama in the field, those that came before us, they set out our deen for us and explained it to us so that it will be easy for us to follow. So these are the 4 sources of our Islamic law. Moving straight into, first and foremost, transactions, sales, and bay'. The Arabic word for transactions is bay'. So this is a common misunderstanding or a common perception we have when we're conducting any business. Then we often hear the phrase that, or we say that after a sale is concluded, we had an offer, we had an acceptance, we say nothing is confirmed until payment is made. Actually, Islamically, the transaction is formed, as we can see in the slide. A transaction is formed by offer and acceptance with consideration. So this means that a transaction, any business dealings that we do, we offer, we're trying to buy something. This occurs when we make an offer for something, and then the acceptance is made. The consideration is what we know as the price. So basically, gifting something is also considered to be a transaction, but the difference between gifting and purchasing we know from the price. But with offer and acceptance, the sale is concluded and it is binding. The ownership will transfer. This is something that needs to be understood. However, the second point in the slide, if you look at the second speech bubble, a transaction is considered completed with possession. So a transaction will be binding with the offer and acceptance, and it will be completed with somebody, with the purchaser making what we call qabz and taking possession of the item. So in the example, we have person A offers to purchase person B's car for 100,000 rands worth of cash, and person B accepts. Person B, when he accepted this transaction, which person A made the offer for person B's car, at this point the transaction is binding and the ownership will transfer from person B to person A. Immediately, person A will then owe person B 100,000 rand worth of cash, but immediately before the payment of the cash even, the ownership of the car will transfer from person B to person A. Person A is purchasing the car in this example, so he will become the new owner of the car as soon as he accepts the transaction. Person B, as long as the transaction is made with a specific thaman, a specific consideration or price, which in this example is 100,000 rand, immediately before payment, the car will transfer ownership. So we have 4 main you can say parts of this transaction. That is, firstly, the offer in Arabic is known as ijab. In this case, Ahmad or person A says that he wants to purchase the car. He makes an offer to person B for the car. The consideration in this example is the thaman or the price. It is 100,000 rand in cash, and person B then accepts the transaction. This is called qabul in Arabic. Person B agrees to sell the transaction. At this point, immediately the transaction will be binding, and the ownership of the car will transfer from person B to person A. However, there is one thing that person A will not be able to do. He will not be able to sell this car off to another party, a third party, until he takes possession. So ownership transfers at the point of acceptance and not at the point of possession. So moving on, certain rules and exceptions in transactions. Basic rules in transactions. Firstly, when conducting any business, any transaction, the item that is being sold, firstly, it must exist. It seems like it's pretty obvious the item has to exist, but there are certain things, so people try and make future sales, they'll sell something which doesn't exist at the moment. It will come into existence later. They're going to still build it. Something can happen where somebody sells something where it doesn't actually exist. Somebody tries to sell air. If he tries to do that, it will not be accepted as a sale in Shariat, and that transaction will be null and void. Secondly, the item must have a value. Sometimes something exists, but it doesn't have any value. The people in the market, nobody regards this thing to have a value. If you ask anybody, what's the price of this? He'll say, this doesn't have any value. Like a string of cotton, it doesn't have any value. When it's a whole yarn of cotton, yes, it will have a value, but something so minuscule that doesn't have a value, like if you open a Kit Kat wrapper and you throw the dirt on the floor, it's something that goes into the bin, it doesn't have a value. Selling that will regard, the sale of that will be regarded as null and void. Thirdly, this item must be in the ownership of the seller prior to the sale. So if somebody tries to sell something, this item that is being sold has to be in the ownership of the seller before he can sell it. Fourthly, it also must be in the possession of the seller prior to the sale. As we saw in the first slide, the offer, then with the consideration and the acceptance, the item will transfer ownership, and only when he takes possession of the item can he then sell it on to a third party. So even if he has ownership of the item, but he has never taken possession of it prior or after purchasing it, he cannot sell it on to a third party until he takes possession. So we'll go in through some slides and some examples of these so that they are understood better. But just going through these important points first. Okay, point number 5: the sale must occur instantly and must be absolute. This means that a sale has to occur on the spot at the time when the business is being conducted. The offer will be made, acceptance will be made immediately. It won't be at a future date. One is a promise and one is an immediate transfer of ownership. The immediate transfer of ownership is seen as a contract. A promise is not a contract. It is merely a promise of a future sale that will come. But the promise is not a binding sale. Only the instant transfer, the offer and acceptance, this will be considered to be a binding sale. Number 6, the price of the item has to be known and it has to be specific. So an item is either sold for 100,000 rand or it's sold for 150,000 rand, but it's not sold for 100 or 150,000 rand. You can't have a price unknown in the contract when the contract is being formed. If the price is not known in the contract, the sale will be null and void. It will have to be reversed and it will be an impermissible transaction. The sale of the item must be unconditional. Having a condition in a sale will render, having a condition which is impermissible in the sale will render the sale null and void. So we'll go into an example just now of that. The second last point on the slide, the sale of the item the sale of items of an impermissible nature also will be impermissible. So example, if somebody wants to sell pork is impermissible for Muslims to consume, he will not be permitted to sell it. And if he does sell it, the sale will be void and he'll have to reverse the sale. Same with wine, the same also applies to blood and carrion. Those things that are impermissible for us to use, for Muslims to use, they are also impermissible for us Muslims to sell. So again, very basically, these are the tenets, the basic rules of transactions. And the last rule on the slide, the delivery of the item at the time of the sale must be known. It must be a known time that the delivery of the item will be sold. Example, we buy something, we order it from Takealot, the item is existing, it's in the ownership of the purchaser. We don't even know the purchaser's name, but we can conduct business because he owns the item is in his possession. We paid, we know the price, it's something that is permissible to sell, it has value ownership, but specifically the delivery of the item, the date, the time is going to be delivered, it has to be known. If it's not known, the sale will be null and void. So example number 1, just to see whether we did understand, going through the again very simply. Example number 1, the item must exist. So if a farmer sells his unborn calf, for example, his cow fell pregnant, and now the cow is about to give birth, or it's a few months pregnant, and he wants to sell off this calf and make a profit. So prior to the cow giving birth, prior to the calf being born, he wants to sell this calf to make a profit. So he sells his unborn calf for 2,000 rand, and the buyer accepts. So he makes the offer, the price is known, the buyer accepts. Is this going to be permitted? Is this allowed? So if anybody wishes to answer, they may answer. So as we can see, the answer is no, this won't be permissible, and the reason is the calf isn't born, and therefore it doesn't exist as yet. If it doesn't exist, it can't be sold. The solution to this issue, if the farmer does want to sell this calf and his cow hasn't given birth yet, he has to wait for the calf to be born and then immediately sell it. He can make a promise to the purchaser that wait for the calf to be born, and as soon as it's born, he can sell it. As the day it's born, he can immediately sell it off to the purchaser. Or alternatively, if he's willing to let go of his cow, he can also sell the cow, which is pregnant, at a higher price. So he can include the price of the unborn calf and the cow together and sell both as one big product. In this case, technically, he'll only be selling the cow. It'll be a pregnant cow, and he can fetch a higher price for it. However, if he doesn't want to sell the cow, then he has to wait until the calf is born before he sells it, because the item doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, then the item that is sold it doesn't fulfill the criteria of something that you can sell, and the sale will be null and void. Example number 2, the item must have a value. So person A sells animal excrement to person B. So the animal did his job, he picked it up, packaged it, and he sold it to person B. So is this transaction going to be permissible? Again, remember, the item must have a value for him to be able to sell it. So is this going to be allowed? So anybody feels they can answer? People in the crowd are saying no. The answer actually is yes and no. So some may be confused by this, and as we said, the item must have a value. The answer is yes and no, depending on the market. Certain products, they may not have a value, but in a specific environment, in a specific community, it will gain a value. So for example, manure is made from animal excrement, as we know. Farmers use this on crops, and therefore this specific type of excrement now has a value, and it will be permissible to sell. However, just because a certain type of it gains a value, doesn't mean all of it gains value. So if somebody decides to sell his own human excrement, that will be impermissible to sell, as it still doesn't have a value, it's not something on the market. So if something doesn't have a value, it can gain value on the market in a specific community, and you'll have to go out in the community to see what the people are doing with this product, if it has a value or if it doesn't have a value. And ulama gave concession that manure can be sold to farmers as they use it, and it has a value in their urf, in their community. So example number 3, ownership. Person A sources a car from a dealership. Example, he goes to Toyota, he goes to BMW, to Mercedes, he goes to Porsche. He picks up a Porsche for 200,000 rand, very cheap Porsche. Before purchasing the car, person A offers the car to person B for 300,000 rand. So he sourced it from a dealership, and he knew the car that he wanted to purchase. He saw it extremely cheap Porsche, and before making the offer to the dealership, person B saw the same car, he wants to purchase it. Person A sells this car to person B, and person B accepts the offer to purchase it from person A for 300,000 rand. Will this sale be permissible? So anybody who wants to answer this question, okay, everybody seems to be saying no. They understand that person A doesn't own the car at the point of the sale. and therefore he cannot sell it off to person B. For person A to make a profit on the car, he has to first own the car, and then only will he be able to sell the car to person B and make the profit. If he does sell it, what happens, this is called Bay'ul Fuzuli, he sold somebody else's property, and if that person gives permission, then the entire price that person B offered for the car will go to the dealership. It will not be given to person A. So if he sells somebody else's property, the person that originally owns it can reject the transaction, and he can also accept the transaction, but if he does, the entire price for that transaction will go to the original owner. So the solution to this issue, where he wants to purchase something and sell it, but he hasn't purchased it yet, person A must purchase the car first before selling it. So he has to pick up the car, he has to go make the offer, get it accepted, transfer the ownership onto his name. It doesn't have to be done on paper, like where he has to go to transfer the ownership onto his own name as far as the government laws are concerned. But Islamically, he has to make an offer, the offer has to get accepted at a specific price, then the ownership will transfer, then only will he be able to sell it off to the third person. Alternatively, person A sells the car on behalf of the dealership as an agent for the dealership. So instead of purchasing it from the dealership, he tells the dealership that I'll find a buyer for you, and then he sells it to person B for the 300,000 rand. In this specific case, however, the dealership will have to know the selling price of the car that person A is selling it for, and his fee will come from the dealership. So in this specific case, where the markup is 50%, it probably wouldn't work out, but that's the only option he has. If the markup is a little bit less, then it might work out. The other option is he purchases it first and then sells it. In this case, the dealership has to know the price that he's selling it for, and will have to agree to give him his commission. In this case, it would have been 100,000 rand. So if they were willing to do that, then it will be acceptable to do. Example number 4a, possession. So a person buys a car from a dealership for 200,000 rand. He pays for the car. However, person A has not collected the car from the dealership. Person A, after paying for the car, making the offer and acceptance, transferred the ownership. Now he wants to sell the car, but he hasn't picked it up from the dealership as yet. Person A then sells the car to person B for 300,000 rand, and person B is told to fetch the car from the dealership directly. Is this going to be permissible? Will this sale be valid? Is this allowed? No, this is also not permissible to do, as person A has not taken possession of the car, and therefore he cannot sell it off to a third person. First he has to take ownership, then he has to take possession if he wants to sell the car. If he wants to keep the car in his ownership, the subtle difference between possession and ownership is if a person has to pass away prior to taking possession, but after making the deal, then the purchased item, in this case the car, will come into his estate, and it will be distributed to all of his heirs, and it will come out of the estate of the dealership or whoever owns the dealership, and it will not be distributed to their heirs. But for him to be able to sell it to a third person, he has to take possession first. Even though he owns the car, he still can't sell it until he takes possession. Example 4b of, again, possession. Person A buys a car from a dealership for 200,000 rand. He pays for the car. However, person A has not collected the car from the dealership. Person B, in this case, makes an offer to buy the car. Remember, in the first example, the one that came just before this, person A made the offer. He sold the car to person B, and he told person B to sell the car, to fetch the car from the dealership. In this example, the same thing happened in the beginning. He purchased the car, 200,000 rand from the dealership, and then person B saw the car and he said he wants to purchase it. So person B offers to buy the car for 300,000 rand, and person B says from his own side he'll fetch the car directly from the dealership, so person A won't have to do anything. Basically, he made a quick 100,000 rand, and he didn't even pick up the car. So is this permissible? Again, the answer will be no, it's not permissible. Person A has not taken possession of the car, and therefore the sale is not valid, just like how it wasn't valid in the previous example. It doesn't matter who made the offer, whether person A made the offer to sell or person B made the offer to purchase. The offer and acceptance. Upon acceptance, the deal would be completed, and in this case, because he hasn't taken possession first, the deal will have to be reversed, and it will be impermissible to do that deal. So person A has not taken possession of the car, and therefore the sale is not going to be valid. It doesn't matter who makes the offer, the seller has to have possession prior to the sale. So a solution to the problem of possession. We have first, basically we have to understand that there are two types of possession. One is constructive and one is actual possession. Both are equally valid Islamically. So we have no issue with accepting both constructive or actual possession. Actual possession refers to the physical action of gaining control of the product. Example, hand-to-hand transfer. So I purchased a pen from my friend, and he has the pen still in his hand. When he hands the pen over to me, this will be possession. So I purchased it for 10 rand, I gave him his 10 rand. When he hands it over to me, this will be my taking possession. And upon my taking possession, I can then sell it off to a third person. Secondly, we have constructive possession. This is found often in immovable objects. With immovable objects, it is impossible to take possession actually, like a house or a building. These things have to be taken possession constructively, and constructive possession refers to gaining access or control over an item, a specific item, without it physically coming into your possession. So you wouldn't have it in your hand, but you would have control over the house, you would have control over the car, you would have control over the item that you purchased, and this will be constituted as constructive possession. Once this occurs, the example we're giving here, when buying a house, the transfer of the keys is the transfer of possession. When you get the keys, you have access to the house, and the seller of that house who sold it to you left his ownership upon acceptance. When he gives you the keys, he now no longer has possession of the house, as he no longer has control or access to that house. That house is now transferred to you with the transfer of the keys, and without setting foot in the house, as long as you have the keys to that house, you can then sell it off to a third person, and it will be permissible to do so. So again, a solution to the issue with the example 4, where he purchased the car from the dealership, and prior to picking it up, he sold it to a third person, person B. But he made offer, he made acceptance, ownership transfer, he just had to take possession. The solution is person A has to take the trouble and go to the dealership and pick up the car from the dealership before selling it to person B. Alternatively, person A can arrange constructive possession with the dealership. The dealership will be granting him access to the vehicle, leaving it in a place where he can access, giving him the keys to the car. If he has access to the vehicle, it will be considered as if he has taken possession of that vehicle, and then he can immediately sell it, even though he never drove the vehicle, even though he didn't set foot into the vehicle, he never got into it. Even if he didn't see the vehicle, he still will be considered having ownership of the car, or possession of the car, merely by transferring the keys into his hands. So if he does arrange constructive possession, he can then sell it off to a third person and make a profit. That sale will be permissible. Example number 5, the sale has to be instant. It must be occurring immediately and not on a future date. So person B in this example tells person A, my car is sold to you in 1 month's time. So will this transaction be permissible? Actually, firstly, what does this mean? This means that a person is conducting the sale now, so the sale is becoming binding now, but he wants the sale to be effective only in 1 month's time. So can this be done? No, this cannot be done. In this example, the contract is binding today, but the sale is effectively taking place in 1 month. This is not permissible, as the sale must be done immediately with offer and acceptance. Obviously, you can have a deferred sale where you're paying later for it, and that will be acceptable as buying something on credit. But the offer and acceptance has to happen immediately, and the transfer of ownership has to happen immediately. In this example, he's selling it now, the contract is being done now, but the ownership is only transferring in 1 month's time, and this sale will be null and void. Example number 6. A sale must be unconditional. Person A, in this example, tells person B, if Russia wins the war, my car is sold to you. So would this be permissible? As you can see, this type of transaction will not be permissible, as we don't know whether Russia is going to win the war. And this is contingent, the sale is contingent on a future event, and it's not happening immediately, it's happening on a future date. And also we don't know whether this actually is going to happen. So they could win, they could not win. In this example, he said, my car is sold to you. That means it's happening immediately, but only contingent on a future date. So this is an example of a sale which will be null and void, and it will have to be reversed. The difference, very quickly, between I will sell it to you and this car or this item is sold to you. If you say, I will sell something to you, this is essentially a promise. If you break a promise, then you will be sinful in the court of Allah. You have done something wrong. You are worthy of being punished by Allah. However, doing this is not a promise, is not a business contract. So ownership of the item won't change hands, and even though you have committed a crime, the sale would not have been conducted with merely a promise. The words of present tense or past tense will have to be used for the contract to occur. And if anything happens with future, this same thing happens with our nikahs. That's why we say nakahtuha. We don't say that I will marry you. You say that I have married you in the past, because in Arabic there is no present tense. The present tense can be confused with future tense. So in English you can have a present tense, you can have past tense. Both these will be considered the immediate, and the transaction will be done. However, if it is done in a future tense, the item will not be sold. It will merely be a promise, and breaking that promise will be sinful, but the ownership of the item wouldn't transfer merely by making it a promise. Secondly, if you say that the item is sold to you and the purchaser accepts it, it takes a form of a contract, and thus the ownership is now binding. So if you say this item is sold to you in the past tense and the purchaser accepts, this contract will be binding. Future tense will not be binding immediately. The example number 7, the item must be known and identifiable to the purchaser and obviously the seller. So in this example, person A approaches a farmer to purchase a sheep, like we do often at Qurbani time. Most of us Muslims will know these masail, where we go to the farmer, we'll pick a sheep, we'll mark that sheep. So at the point of sale, person A chooses his sheep. He'll mark his sheep, he'll use his spray paint or whatever he is using to specify that specific sheep and not any other sheep, and then the sale will be concluded. So he'll make an offer on that sheep, and the acceptance will come from the farmer, or the other way around. On an acceptance of a specific item, that item's ownership will transfer to the purchaser, and when the sheep is delivered, in this example, person A receives an identical sheep to the one that he chose, but it's not the exact same one. So it looks the same, but it's not specifically the sheep that he chose, the one that he specified, the one that he marked, or the one that he pointed towards. Is this going to be permissible? Because it's basically the same thing. It's almost the same sheep, it's just not that specific one. Will this say the sale was concluded obviously on one sheep, and a similar sheep was brought? Is this going to be permissible? So the answer to this question is obviously no, it won't be permissible, because at the time of the sale, the item that is being sold has to be known and identifiable. So that specific sheep that was chosen and identified, that's the one that was sold, that's the one that ownership of was transferred, and that's the one that has to be delivered. If a separate one was delivered, what has to happen in that case? The old sale will have to be cancelled, and a new sale will have to be done on the new sheep. Obviously, this will occur only with the permission of the buyer. If he wants his specific sheep, then the farmer has to provide his specific sheep, as that ownership of that sheep transferred at the time of the sale and not when he made the delivery. Example number 8, the price of an item must be known when it's being sold. So person A buys person B's car on condition that if he pays in 1 month, the price is 200,000 rand, but if he pays in 2 months, the price is 250,000 rand. Is this going to be allowed? Will this be permissible in Shariat? In this case, he has two different prices on the same product. One if he pays in 1 month, and a different price if he pays in 2 months. Is this transaction going to be permissible? The answer is no. The price of an item must be fixed and known at the time of the sale. At the point of sale, person A does not know what the price is of the item. It could be 200 or it could be 250, and depending on when he makes his payments, therefore the item price is not known at the time of the sale, and the sale is therefore null and void. It's not that he makes the sale and he does the transaction, he makes the payment in 1 month, 200,000, and the sale is fine. The sale, because he didn't have a fixed price at the time of sale, the sale is null and void and has to be reversed. So one point to understand, that a sale is concluded upon acceptance, not upon offer. So you can have multiple prices on your offer. You can have a cash price, you can have a credit price, you can have a different price offered every day of the year. 365, 360 different prices can be offered, but upon acceptance, one of those prices has to be picked. So he either, in this example, 200,000 rand in 1 month or 250,000 rand in 2 months, he either has to, the one that's purchasing will have to either pick 200,000 rand and say I'm going to pay in 1 month, or he'll have to pick 250,000 rand and say that I'm going to pay in 2 months. And the price of the item has to be specific and it has to be binding. If, in this example, the person picks 200,000 rand after 1 month and then finds that he can't make that payment, the purchaser, the seller in this case, has no option but to accept that the price doesn't go up to 250,000 rand because he pays a month later. This will be impermissible to charge that extra and be considered as interest, because he's paying extra for the extra time that he's paying. And on the contrary, if the person who's purchasing agrees to pay in 2 months at the price of 250,000 rand and then finds that he has the money now after 1 month to pay early, he can't force the purchaser to accept his reduced price of 200,000 rand and get a 50,000 rand rebate or discount in the price. He can't force it. He can request it, obviously, but the same applies the other way around. It can be requested, but it can't be forced in the contract. What's binding is only one price for one commodity at one given specific time. So you have to pick either 200 or 250, and if for some reason you can't make the deadline, the price that is owed does not change. It is specific and it is known, or the sale is impermissible and has to be reversed. Example number 9. Again, if anybody has any questions, they're free to ask. They can ask at any point. You can stop me and just ask any questions. If it's not easily understood, you're free to ask at any point in time. Does anybody have any questions now on the course material? Okay, then we move on. Example number 9. If anybody online has any questions, they can type it out and send it to us. And if we can't answer it today, then we'll try and answer it at a later stage on AL-BURHAAN's website. Example number 9, moving on. Example number 9, a sale must be unconditional, and so it's easily understood from example. A person A buys person B's car on condition that person B will hire person A's son at his firm. So is this going to be permissible? The answer to this is no, it will not be permissible. The sale has to be unconditional, and therefore the sale is null and void. It won't be a sale that goes through in this case because there's two willing parties. This sale with this specific condition added to it would be null and void. The sale will have to be reversed. It will have to be cancelled and a new sale will have to be done without this condition. This can be done as a separate transaction where person B hires person A's son. However, putting it as a condition in the sale will be impermissible and it will have to be reversed. However, there is a separate a caveat in this specific example. A sale has to be unconditional. However, the condition, if it is linked directly to the product that is being purchased and can be considered part of the sale, this needs a little bit more explanation. You'll have to check up with the ulama in specific situations. But in this example, person A buys a fridge from person B on condition that person B does the service for free for 2 years. Is this going to be permissible? And the answer is yes. In this case, it actually is permissible. A condition will be considered acceptable in a transaction and permissible in a transaction because it is recognized as part of the transaction. Sometimes certain things, certain conditions will be permissible and added to the transaction, and sometimes it will be, one example that comes to mind, on occasion Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Aisha radiallahu anha purchased a slave, and the condition to that purchase was that upon the death of the slave, the inheritance rights will not be transferred to the new owner, it will stay with the old owner. So Aisha radiallahu anha asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she's buying it from non-Muslim people, can she continue with the sale? And in this specific case, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave her permission. She said, you can do this, however, the condition for this sale will fall off. So from there we understand, sometimes when a condition is put on a sale, the condition will render the entire sale null and void. Sometimes the condition will fall off, but the sale will be binding and it will have to be honored, the sale specifically, but not the condition. And sometimes the condition and the sale will both be permissible and be binding, like it is in this example of the service being done for free for 2 years. So moving on, after this we have partnerships. So this is something that we didn't discuss last week. So there's various types of partnerships that people can join into. Partnerships are often used by banks or Islamic banks to offer financing. So we'll come to that at a later stage. But fundamentally, there's multiple types of partnerships, and we'll go in through some of them now. So there's, if you can see on the slide itself, this is so we have shirka, two types of shirka, shirkatul milk, this is joint ownership, and shirkatul aqd, this is a joint enterprise. So shirkatul milk means two or more people own a specific item. We'll come into how that will happen just now. And secondly, we have shirkatul aqd, which is where people enter into a contract to do business together as partners. So within shirkatul milk, there's the compulsory type, the type you have no choice over. Sometimes it will just happen. We'll give an example just now. And secondly, we have the type that is optional, where people choose to jointly own a product, either for doing business or just for keeping as a joint ownership. Shirkatul aqd is basically three types of shirkatul aqd. One is shirkatul mal, shirkatul a'mal, and shirkatul wujuh. So this basically translated, okay, we'll go into the slides. So shirkatul milk is where two or more people join in ownership of a particular item or a particular property. So shirkatul milk, the optional, an example of where it happens by choice of those two individuals is two parties agreed to purchase equipment at 50% ownership each. So they approach somebody who has the equipment Two of them put down half the capital each to purchase the equipment. Equipment is 100,000 rand. They each put down 50,000 rand, and they purchase that equipment. They make the transaction, and immediately transfer of the ownership will come into both of their names, 50% each, and they will own this item. An example of compulsory ownership, which is found in partnerships, is somebody passes away, the deceased estate will be jointly owned immediately by all the heirs in the respective share ratio, and this happens immediately at the time of death, and it doesn't wait for even 5 minutes. As soon as the deceased passes away, the new owners of the deceased estate completely all of his heirs, and they own his property. If he has multiple properties, it's not a few will take this property, a few will take that property. They will decide that at a later stage, but immediately at the time of death, all of them jointly own all of his property. So without choice from them, immediately they become joint, the items in question become jointly owned by all of the heirs. The second type is shirkatul aqd. This is the one that generally is done where people enter into partnerships to do business. There's three types of it. One is shirkatul amwal. This is where all the partners in this specific type of transaction or this specific partnership will invest some capital into a commercial enterprise, and then they'll start conducting business. In this specific type of shirkat, all of the partners have to invest some capital, and if they even if it's varying amounts, where one invests 10% and the other one invests 90%, it will still be considered shirkatul amwal. You can have multiple people, you can have thousands of people coming together, all of them putting money, and that money will enter them into a shirkat, which is shirkatul amwal. Secondly, we have shirkatul a'mal. In this type of partnership, all the partners jointly undertake to render services to customers. Example, doctors, lawyers, they'll join forces and they will say that whatever business we do, whatever services we render, the fees for that will be combined and it will be shared to us according to the ratio that we stipulate. So even in this example, if there were two doctors, one saw 9 patients in one day, one saw 1 patient in that day, and the agreement was 50-50 split, all of the money will be pulled together and it will be split 50-50, not according to how much each person did, according to what they stipulated in the ratio. Lastly, we have shirkatul wujuh. This is an example or a type of partnership which we often don't see today, but in this one there's no capital investment from any of the parties. The name of this is shirkatul wujuh. It gets its name from wajh, which means a person's face. So it got its name, is named because a person has a specific reputation in society, so he can go to certain people without any capital investment. He can attain business by getting things on credit from certain people. So people will, this example is where this shirkat is where 2 or more people gather like this with no capital. They go around and they take on credits and they sell for cash, and then they split the profit like this. So people, this is sort of equivalent to goodwill, where people will, based on their reputation, be able to get business even without capital. So a shirkat of that, a partnership of that is called shirkatul wujuh. Also, this will be according to what the ratio is that you stipulate. That's how much each person will get, not according to how much business they brought in. So some basic rules of shirkatul amwal. All conditions, it's raining now and there's a lot of noise, so we'll move quickly through this. All conditions of a valid contract must be present in shirkatul amwal. So this is generally the type of shirkat that's done where people invest their monies together and they conduct business with joint capital venture. So they invest together and they do business together. Now the distribution of the profits, the ratio of those profits, what's permitted, what's not permitted, and the sharing of a loss will be discussed now. So very quickly, the distribution of profits, that is the profit must be distributed in Shirkatul Amwal, in a partnership where multiple people, two or more people, put their capital together. The distribution must occur on the profit, and it has to be at a ratio that is agreed upon at the time of the contract initiation. So when the partners come together, they have to stipulate what percentage of profit they will be taking from this contract, from this partnership. If no such proportion has been determined, the contract of this partnership will be null and void. It has to be stated at the beginning of the partnership what percentage of profit each partner will be taking. Thirdly, the ratio of profit is determined by actual profits and not by the capital investment of the parties. So the ratio again of profits will be determined by the actual profits and not by the capital investment of the parties. So an example, if person A puts in 10,000 rand, person B puts in 90,000 rand, they do business, they make 100% profit. So it doesn't mean that now because person A put in 10,000 rand, he'll make 10,000 rand. He has to firstly stipulate what the ratio is. In this example, you'll see that you can stipulate 50, even though you invested 10,000 and 90,000, 10% and 90%, the profit ratio can be 50-50, it can be 70-30, it can be whatever you stipulate it to be. So it can be 50-50. So let's take example of 50-50. Person A puts in 10, person B puts in 90, they make 100% profit. So the 50,000 rand profit will go to person A, 50,000 rand to person B, and the initial capital 10,000 rand also will go back to person A, and 90,000 rand will go to person B. If no stipulation of the ratio of profit is made, this will render the contract null and void. Also, if person A says that he wants to fix his amount of capital, he's putting 10,000 or 100,000 rand, and he wants to get 10,000 rand profit only from this venture. Whether he makes more or less, he only wants to take 10,000 rand. This will be impermissible to do, as it's a fixed amount, and his capital investment also is fixed. So it's a known ratio based on the capital, and it will be impermissible to do. Also, if he says he only wants 10% of his capital, that's how much he wants to take. This will be impermissible to do, as it's based on the capital investment and not on the actual profits. If the company sees a loss and he takes his profit on his capital, he'll still be entitled to his capital, and this is impermissible Islamically. If the company makes a massive profit, then also he's only entitled to his 10,000 rand, but his 10%. But in this case, it's not permissible because profits are shared on actual profits. The ratio of profits will be determined by actual profits and not the capital investment of the parties. So again, ratios of the profits can be distributed disproportionately to the capital investment of the partners. It doesn't have to be according to how much you invested. You can get back a different percentage of profit as opposed to how much you invested with regards to your capital. The profit share of a silent partner, this is one caveat that we have to just remember. If a silent partner, if a person invests his money and he doesn't do anything in the business, he specifically expresses that he will remain a silent partner throughout the entire duration of this partnership, then his specific share cannot exceed his capital investment proportion. So if 5 partners came in, one is silent, all invested 100,000 rand, then his capital amount is 20%. Therefore, his profit ratio can't exceed 20% in this partnership, as he has expressly said that he's going to be a silent partner in this partnership, and his profit can't exceed, in that specific case only, the silent partner's profit cannot exceed his proportional capital investment. Now, sharing of the loss. This is about the last slide that we have for today. So if there are any questions, we'll take it after the slide. The sharing of the loss doesn't work the same as the profit. All Muslim jurists are unanimous on this point, that the loss of a partnership will be shared according to the investment. So if you made a loss, Allah make it such that we don't see any loss, but if the partnership came together and it didn't go as we planned, it made a loss, then the loss will be in proportion to how much you invested. So if my person A and person B, one invested 10,000 rand, one invested 90,000 rand, and they agreed on 50-50 split of the profits, and then they saw a loss of 50%. So half the assets went missing. Person A, despite him agreeing to a 50% partnership on profit, when the loss occurred, his loss is only 50% of his capital investment. If they made a 30% loss, it would be 30% of his capital investment. 3,000 rand will be his loss, and the rest of the 90,000 rand, 30% of that, 27,000 rand, would be the loss of person B. So sharing of loss will be specifically on the capital investment, but the ratio of profit will be on the profit, but it will be stipulated according to the partnership agreement. It has to be stipulated. If it's not stipulated at the initial stages, at the point of the partnership forming, it will be null and void. So it has to be stipulated, and the losses will be shared according to the capital investment. Again, a silent partner, if you look here again, a silent partner, his share cannot exceed his capital investment, but this only applies if he is an express silent partner, and he says from the beginning till the end of this partnership, he will not be doing any of the work in that partnership. He is only investing his money. Then his share will be maximum the percentage of his capital investment in that venture. Okay, so next week, if there are any questions, you're free to ask with regards to the course material. And anybody who has any questions online, any questions? Nothing. Anybody who has any questions online, they can, with correspondence, they can send us a message at Al-Burhan. There is a form that will be sent out, so you can fill in that form with your question, send it in through to Al-Burhan, and we'll try and answer that question either directly to you, or we'll put it into the presentation next week. Next week we're going to go into asset-backed financing, and we'll touch on riba as well. So subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallahu khairan.